My dear children, and today's chapter is self and personality, and topic is cognitive and behavioral aspects of self. Children, you already know what is self, what are the different types of self, and today you have to know about cognitive and behavioral aspects of self. Yes, and cognitive aspects, you know, self-concept, self-esteem, self-efficacy, and behavioral part, you know, self-regulation, self-control, etc. So what is self-concept? And self-concept, you know, is an important part of our personality. Yes, important part of our self. So what is self-concept? Children, you have to ask yourself, who am I? Yes, and ask yourself your positive qualities, your skills, how you perceive yourself, how you know about your competences, your attributes, your skills. So self-concept means, you know, the way we perceive ourselves and the ideas we hold about our competences and attributes. And you know, self-concept may be positive or negative. Yes. And finding out an individual self-concept is not easy. So how you can improve and how you can identify your self-concept? Yes. And most frequently used method, you know, involves asking the persons about herself and himself. And I already told. Yes. So ask yourself your skills, your positive part, and from your past experiences, your day-to-day activities, you can identify, you know, your self-concept. Yes. And you have already done one practical and which is based on self-concept. Yes. We know we can identify various parts of our self-concept. You know, physical self-concept, social, educational, moral, intellectual, etc. Yes. So now, other one is, you know, self-esteem is another important part, is also self-esteem. Yes. So what is self-esteem? And self-esteem means, you know, as person, we always, you know, make some judgment about our own value or worth. Yes, that means the value judgment of a person about herself or himself is called self-esteem. Value judgment of a person. The self-esteem is important. Yes. And it also influences, you know, our motivation. Yes. And the people, you know, with a healthy and positive view of themselves understand their potential and may feel inspired to take on new challenges. Yes. And the important thing is that, and what are the characteristics of high self-esteem? And realistic and appropriate expectations about themselves and their abilities. Understand their needs also. And they know and how they express their needs. Yes. And ability to maintain healthy relationship with others. Yes. And you know, people with low self-esteem tend to feel less secure. Yes. And less sure of their abilities. and may doubt their decision making part also. Yes. And now, studies indicate that by the age of 6 to 7 years, children seem to have formed self-esteem at least in 4 areas. One is academic competence, social competence, physical competence, and physical appearance also. Yes. And self-esteem shows a strong relationship with our everyday behavior. And the high self-esteem, how can we improve our self-esteem? How can we develop or enhance our self-esteem? And children with high academic self-esteem perform better in school. Yes. And children with high social self-esteem are more liked by their friends. And as well as children with low self-esteem in all areas are often found to display, anxiety, depression, and increasing antisocial behavior also. So what are the factors of affecting self-esteem? That means the factors that affect self-esteem. And warm and positive parenting is important, one of the important factors. Yes. And studies have shown that warm and positive parenting, helps in the development of high self-esteem among children. Yes. And other, also our thought patterns, our socioeconomic status, age, etc. Now, children, and in this picture, and the low self-esteem and the high self-esteem and self-efficacy. So what is self-efficacy? Is important part. And the Bandura, Albert Bandura, proposed a social learning theory or gave the concept of observational learning and also the concept of self-efficacy. And self-efficacy, based on Bandura's social learning theory. So now, what is self-efficacy? Yes. And self-efficacy is also another important part of our self. Yes. And the important thing is that belief about your potentialities. Yes. And self-efficacy, according to Bandura, a key factor in how people regulate their lives and their beliefs concerning their ability to perform the behaviors needed to achieve desired outcomes. So believe about yourself, your abilities. Yes. And people whose self-efficacy is high have confidence in their ability to do what it takes to overcome obstacles and achieve their goals also. Yes. And a strong sense of self-efficacy allows people to select, influence, and even construct the circumstances of their own life. And people with a strong sense of self-efficacy also feel, less fearful. And we can develop our self-efficacy. Yes. That means self-efficacy can be developed. And people with high self-efficacy, have been found to stop smoking the moment they decide to do so. Yes. So you know about your potentialities. And again, what are the important factors of developing self-efficacy? And obviously, you know our parenting, that means our parents. And other important things, our positive experiences. Yes, can help in the development of strong sense of self-efficacy. And the proper role modeling. Yes. And now, next. And self-efficacy judgment. And 4 important determinants have been identified, you know, and performance, experiences, observational learning, verbal persuasion, emotional arousal, only for your knowledge. Yes. And now self-regulation. What is self-regulation? So behavioral part. Yes. And I can regulate our behavior. I can control myself. That means self-regulation refers to our ability to organize and monitor our own behavior. It's very much important for our life. Yes, very much important. And our ability to organize and monitor our own behavior. And now, children, self-control. And the important part also, how can I control myself, is important part. Yes, you can do anything, but the important thing is that self-control, in which part, up to in which level. Yes. And just you have to control yourself. And the other important thing, you have to express your needs. Yes, is important part also. But as well as a particular moment, you have to control yourself also. Yes. So what is self-control? Learning to delay or defer the gratification of needs. Yes. Is called self-control. You know, for example, in various kinds of fasting. Yes. In our culture. And we just control ourselves. Yes. So self-control plays a key role in the fulfillment of long-term goals. And the techniques of self-control, observation of own behavior. You have to observe your own behavior. And other important thing is that self-instruction is another important. And other important self-reinforcement, you already know what is reinforcement. And self-reinforcement is another important part. Yes. So the techniques of self-control, you know, observation of own behavior, self-instruction and self-reinforcement. And now, children, culture and self. So, what is culture? Culture means rules, regulation, values which are carried from generation to generation. Yes. And culture, you know, plays important role for our life. And obviously the difference between Indian and Western views. Yes. And differentiate between Indian and Western views of self. And what are the differences? And mainly, you know, Western cultures are characterized as, individualistic culture. And Asian culture, collectivist culture. So what is the meaning of it, individualistic and collectivist? And individualistic cultures are those that stress the needs and of an individual over the needs of the group as a whole. Yes. And people are seen as, an independent and autonomous. Yes. And North America and Western Europe, tend to be individualistic culture. Yes. And in individualistic culture, they are strong, they are assertive, they are independent. And the clear difference between, self and other, and man and nature, and subjective and objective part. An Indian view, doesn't make such clear differences. Yes. And so Western culture, individualistic culture, and Indian culture, collectivist culture. Yes. That means in collectivist culture means a person is a part of a particular group. Yes. So in Indian culture, the self is generally not separated from one's own group. Rather, both remain in a state of harmonious coexistence. So the important thing is that Western culture, individualistic, and Indian culture, collectivist. Yes. And thank you, my dear children.